This is actually private ownership towards the road on the along Riverview there. The town then had its own surveyor go through everything on his own, found the same thing, and then we had the town attorney hire to have a full title search done, also showed the same thing. So they all matched up that this is under private ownership right here. All the magenta is all owned by the same owner, but the area in question is parcel D right here that we're talking about. And here's the part that's owned by the town, that's mostly the rocks through here. And then just you can kind of see also, here's where the existing riparian lines are, assumed riparian line. You can see the yellow dashed right here. There used to be a little dock out there, probably most of you know, it disappeared not long ago. So right here we're looking at the riparian lines, kind of where our rights go out. There's a couple dolphins right there. And then right here off of this little, right here's a little triangle piece. Right there's the assumed current riparian line. Okay. Now, what's being proposed is, now, there's some different options. I'm going to tell you what right now is a proposal that's out there. If you look right here under this magenta piece and this, which is parcels A and C, this is by the parking area here for the rocks. The proposal would be to swap these two pieces of parcel, basically for parcel D to have all the parking under town ownership. Here you can see, so this piece and this piece would go to private ownership. This piece will go from private ownership back to the town. And I should mention, I forgot to mention before, if you look at the title history for this piece of property, there is reference to an easement through there. So no matter what, there's some sort of access to this. It's not defined, but there is definitely access currently that just would need to be defined. Here it kind of shows you, here's the existing riparian lines I showed you before. And then what's being proposed besides the property swap is to change the riparian lines, basically to give more ability to do something with that piece of property. So that's the proposal that came to the town. So you'd have this piece and this piece go to private ownership, this come to the town, and then the riparian lines would shift to these red ones. Give you a second to look at that.
Yellow lines are riparian rights
Existing.
that exist now.
Correct.
And for which property?
For the town, because the town goes right here, the current town property goes from this point all the way up to this right here. So this is all town. It's just that with those dolphins and restrictions through here, this is the current assumed riparian line. Is that clear? Okay.
And the red lines
Oh, sorry.
are
This would be the new riparian lines in order to give a little more flexibility to that piece if it went to private ownership. And then just so you know what kind of sizes of property we're talking about, the town currently owns the biggest piece, of course, in the middle is the 1,054, but total we have 1,731 square feet right now, actual land property. Private ownership along there, talking just about that parking area, is 1,114. If the proposed swap happened, the town would gain 437 square feet to a total of 2,168 square feet. And then the private property would lose 437 feet, of course. So going back to that again, so again, there'd be a net of 437 by trading this and this for this. But again, pointing out there'd be definitely a change on the riparian lines. Oop. And kind of in terms of options, of course, you have the option of doing nothing. We would, however, make it clear where the public access is to the current property, because there is definitely a right through there. We could do the property swap, and then, or else we could also, third option, look at other legal options. Because obviously this has been historically used, so there could be some options there. It would be a process, obviously, a legal process that would take a while. But Greg, do you have any history or anything you want to share?
no.
Oh, sorry.
Good evening, Greg Hanover, Director of Public Works. We did a lot of research on this property. I know, a lot of you probably seen GIS, which is incorrect, is what it shows the town owns. And we are very confident that what we're showing here tonight is what the town actually owns. This, a little bit of history on this. There was a lobster hatchery that the state of Connecticut put in here in 1905, and they purchased this small piece, which is the rocks from, the property owner at the time, which was the McDonald's, which owned this whole thing, and Riverview Avenue was not there at that time. And when the state purchased it, they were given a right-of-way to a road. It doesn't specify where the right-of-way goes, the type of right-of-way it is, what size it is, or anything else. It's really open up to interpretation, but it does say it's to be laid out by the owner of this property. So it could be, at the time, it probably went up to Palmer Court. And the lobster hatchery, which was built in 1906, it stayed there until the 38 hurricane, which wiped it out. And shortly after that, the state of Connecticut, through a legislative act, sold it to the town. And it's been it was never really surveyed before, so it was just worked because the property owner let people park there, and the town never really knew, I guess, how much we really owned until this survey came up just a couple of years ago.
I guess we'll move into questions then. Sean is going to have a microphone. If anybody has a question, raise your hand, and Sean will bring you the microphone.
Can you assess the value of the current configuration with the new proposal in terms of giving up waterfront property and having roadside property? I imagine there might be a difference in value.
Yeah, and that would be a requirement of any property swap, as well as an official public hearing, certain postings, that sort of thing. This is so early on, it's just to get initial reaction. So that hasn't been done. If basically the answer is no, we won't spend that money. So we're not even that far into the process yet. We just want to get initial reactions on the idea. Mm-hmm.
The hatchery was state-owned, as I understand. And so at what point did it switch to be town-owned?
As I said, it was a state hatchery there until 1938 when the hurricane took it out. And in 1941, there was a special legislative act by the state, and they agreed to sell it to the town for $1.
In what year?
1941. Well, the legislative act was in 41, actually transferred to the town in 1942, I think so.
And the reason again for changing the riparian rights?
That was a request of the property owner as part of the...
Once it was realized that that where people had typically parked, it's kind of, let me flash back a couple, get rid of the lines. Just actually, I think I will. Once it was realized that part of this is private owned, those boulders were put up where people usually pull in the park. That sort of is what triggered this discussion. We started getting a lot of calls from people wanting access there. That's what triggered all of this and looking at our options.
So the owner wants to change the riparian rights
Right.
for the purpose of building a dock or what?
Currently, other than some sort of easement that does exist across the property, this is all private owned. It's not like the town couldn't go in and remove boulders or anything like that. It's unless there's some sort of arrangement, this remains blocked off.
Right, but the town could build a dock and there would be an easement through it. Therefore, the riparian rights are very important.
Yes, and even with the swap, there'd still be room to build a dock, but yes.
I have a question. Could you go back to the square footage slide? I mean, well, stop it right there for a minute.
Oops, sorry. Which one? Right there?
No, the other one with the property in blue, town property. Yeah,
let's show everything.
just look at that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the square footage slide had the town owning more property than
This isn't in play right here, and neither is that, so that's not counted in there. For their property, we're only talking about this. So we're talking this piece and this piece being swapped with this piece would result in 437 or 427? 437 square feet more. So the other is not part of that equation because there's nothing being done with that property.
Yeah. And And also, I don't know if things have changed, but a while back, the DEP had or DEEP, I guess, had a requirement that you could only put one dock off of a person's property anyway. So I'm not sure why the riparian rights lines have to be moved.
Though this would be a separate piece, though, than this. This would be one piece, this would be one piece. And right now, just the configuration wouldn't allow for it.
Under the same ownership.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that DEP regulation.
Well, there is. There is, unless they've rescinded it lately.
We'll look into that. We'll make a note of that. Next. Zell?
Please, Robert, take my mask off.
Sure.
I'd like to go back to the slide where you show the two sets of riparian lines.
Let me go to that one.
Okay, that one. My first question is, and I'm going to use this pointer, I hope. I just don't want to work.
Can't see
Okay. If the town property line is here, why isn't the line drawn out as such? But that's predicated on, is there a permit for those two dolphins?
I would assume there is, but I've never seen one.
Well, it seems to me that that becomes really important in this whole conversation, because if it goes straight out here, and those are illegal, then essentially this property owner has encroached upon what would be the right the town would have to access to the water. Now, the reason I bring this up is because this is important, because this is if you go from here to here as being public access, and you have these lines and it goes out to here, in fact, this is essentially your access to the channel which runs, and you don't have the channel here, and I would recommend you put that there. That's access that is much greater, public access, than simply what would end up being the access that is this way and doesn't go directly straight to the channel. And as you know, these lines are drawn typically perpendicular to the federal waterway. And so this is a much more accurate, but I'd ask that issue get resolved before any further action gets taken. And I guess my question is, so who proposed this? Is this the town proposal, or is this the applicant's proposal?
I mean, there was, of course, negotiation, but essentially the applicant, the private property owner.
Excuse me, may I address the dolphins?
Sure. And do you want to, let's get you a microphone real quick.
Oh, this is quick. I just walked in at the right time. I'm Stephen Stallman. I'm the owner of 48 Riverview. This pier and those dolphins, and it is permitted. It's permitted by DEEP. It's on file with the town, and it's also permitted by the Army Corps of Engineers. Recent permit. So if there's any other questions, that property line has been established. There is a property line that was re-established, and that's on this side between the Andersons' property and myself, and that line became perpendicular to the federal waterway. But these dolphins are recently permitted. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Sean will take the, she's been waiting for a while.
Yes, the question I have, I know for years I've seen people come and park where the rocks are now to go fishing there. I don't know where the people come from. They're not from the village, but they fish there and they have an absolutely wonderful time. And I'm wondering, I just see where they're parked and that they're there, and I talk to them, but I don't really know where they're casting their lines or where they're fishing from. So what area are they using for fishing?
I'll let people, like, anybody want to answer? I've been out there a few times, and mostly I've seen people out in the rocks just in front of the parking, but think they think, okay, this we know is public property, so I think they generally stay within that area. As that's been what I've noticed. If anyone else has seen something else, let me know.
Yeah, I didn't know whether they, they came over in this area or not.
Again,
And sure, it's possible.
I've only been an owner there for 3 years, but I can tell you that I have never, in the 3 years, seen anybody fish on the other side of that point, to the north side of that point. Anybody who has come and fished there has been in that little cove area there, near the parking area, but nobody has ever fished to the north of the telephone pole.
Thank you. In the back there.
Nelson Brown, 18 Sachem Road. My question is this, there's new stakes there where I guess 2 surveys have been done, one by the town, one by the homeowner. And given the deed specifications, those measurements come off of the road. Is there any consideration being given to the fact that when this property was sold by the McDonalds 115 years ago, there was no road, it was more likely a path for horses and carts, and that the line where it should be drawing off of towards the river, in fact, in those days, were probably much closer in to the, say, center of the road now, because the only reason I ask this is the southern part of the foundation on the old lobster hatchery goes well beyond, if you draw a straight line between those 2 stakes and you get on that lobster hatchery southern foundation, goes well in from that. And that building was 32 by 25. So there's many photographs of that time where that building was almost in the road. And so I don't know how it was done, but if they just took it off the road as the road exists today, that's not the way it was 115 years ago.
Yeah, no, it was not taken off the road. We realized the road was not there back when the McDonalds were there. It was taken off some deed dimensions for their property and subtracting what the state had purchased. I think it was 10 feet along the north and then 107 along the south. And we also looked at, our surveyors, both the private surveyor and the town surveyor looked at, the foundations and the, old historic photographs and some of the old aerial photographs. And this is based on those and also the deeds, this is what they came up with as a best fit.
And to mention, the title company did not want to use any of our materials. They did their own independent search to see if they would come up, what they would come up with.
Can someone show where this lobster hatchery was on this particular drawing? Or
Can you tell on there?
photograph?
Should I go back to a different one?
No, I mean, it's, there's a little bit of foundation you can see here. So it's probably, the building's here kind of over the rocks and there's a dock, towards the river. So it was over in this area here.
This had nothing to do with. This had nothing to do with the lobster hatchery that we think of as was the marine lab for Yukon,
Correct.
or
No, this
which is now the oyster hatchery.
Yeah, no, this is a building that was wiped out in the 30 hurricane.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Well, it would be interesting because that, I'll second what Mr. Brown said, that foundation does appear to go well to the, I guess it would be the northwest of the property line that's running northeast, southwest there. I mean, you'd have to take a shovel, and it doesn't look like anybody's taking a shovel to it when they did recently, when they did the survey. So you'd have to take a shovel and look where that foundation does go.
Okay, I appreciate everyone coming out. Oh, we got one more. Oh, we got 2, yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering about the parking. The section that they want to trade. If that's been used for public access forever, what options does the town have for just taking it?
Well, as I mentioned before, that is one of the, some sort of legal actions. I don't want to say exactly, I wouldn't call it taking.
Well,
but
I mean,
there
it's just
certainly could be some rights there from long-term use, and it would just be a court process. That is certainly one of the options.
A court process?
Yeah.
It's possible to do that? Yeah. All right, thank you.
Paul Bates, I wondered if you'd ask the town attorney for an opinion as to the wording in the deed from the state to the town that says the property is to be used for the public. Does that in any way impinge the town from giving it away or trading it away?
I'll ask my attorney. Has my attorney looked at that? And this is Eric Callahan, one of the town's attorneys.
Are you talking about the two pieces that are being traded for the?
No, sir. Talking about when the state gave the property to the town in the deed, and also in the state legal action in the state legislature, it says that the property is going to the town for public use.
So we had a title searcher look at exactly what the state transferred to the town, and the conclusion was that the town doesn't own the parking area piece.
I'm not talking about the parking area, talking about, go back to the picture that shows the town property that you all agreed on.
Back where it shows both colors? Right, that one? Or which one?
All of that pink stuff was conveyed from the state to the town. The request is for a small piece of that on the bottom
and that piece,
and a larger piece on the top to be conveyed to the abutting property owner.
Correct.
In the deed and in the state action, it says that the property is to be used for the public use. Please go back and read the deed yourself, sir. The other question I'd like the lawyer to respond to is, if you do trade the properties, you're then creating a new lot on the north end, which is a substandard lot, and in NOAG zoning, and I believe also in the town zoning, and I've spoken with Bill Mulholland, the NOAG zoning enforcement officer, has said that you're not permitted to create a substandard lot. Have you looked at that, sir?
I can look at all those questions that you just posed. My understanding is that the piece that's being provided from the town to the homeowner would be merged with his other lot. So I don't know if it creates a substandard lot or not with that merger.
In a minute, you can.
Could the lawyer give us a little more understanding of what an easement could or may or should be, or is it only determined once you go to see the judge?
So there's been two references to a right-of-way. One is what's in the chain of title, which is very vague. So you'd need to bring a quiet title action to have a court adjudicate what rights, if any, the town has from that right-of-way. There's a different type of easement called a prescriptive easement. And if you've been using that parking area for an uninterrupted period of 15 years or more continuously, regardless of whether the property owner has also been using that area or not, you can bring a claim in court arguing that you should have a prescriptive easement to continue being able to use that area for the same purpose you've been using it for that 15-year period. And the judge would have to find whether or not to grant you those continued rights.
Can you ask for a prescriptive easement if you already have a deeded easement? Or does that preclude the prescriptive easement possibility?
The deeded easement, meaning the right-of-way that I referenced, it sounds to me that that right-of-way was leading to another road. So my argument would be those are different, and that the prescriptive easement argument would not be precluded by the right-of-way references that are in the chain of title.
When you talk about the riparian line on the left side of the drawing, is that something that's,
The existing?
you call it an existing riparian line, but is it in writing, and is it something that's been mutually agreed upon between the town and any previous property owner?
I believe it's just assumed at this point, yeah.
So who assumed it?
I did. I'm just showing a line that's perpendicular to the channel that would be your normal riparian line. There's nothing in writing. I mean, that's kind of, what would typically be assumed to be a riparian line.
Was an attorney by the name of Dwight Merriam that was very active in the last century and the early part of this one, who wrote a big treatise on riparian lines. And when you came to a concave or a convex shoreline, he had a lot to say, and I hope you don't end up with that line.
And then we have, Sean, we have a question up here. Right here. Yep.
Sorry.
Oh, we got one more, then we'll get to you. Okay, just one second.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to try to understand and rephrase, I think, what Paul was asking, just so I can ask it as well. But I think what the gist of what he was trying to ask was, if land is given to the public trust for public use in the deed, how can the public then give it to a private property owner? It seems like you're violating the original deed. Is it just a technical issue, or has that been considered?
Oh, obviously, obviously you can't move on if there was such a restriction, but it'd have to be further researched. It all depends how it's written and if it does indeed exist that way. So, obviously, if there was a real restriction like that, you wouldn't be able to trade it off. So.
Well, I think that's a pretty important point, even to get jump started on this, is to resolve whether that can even be legally done. Thank you.
Oh, Eric wants to say. Bring it to Eric.
I can look at the deed to see exactly how the language is written about that you're referencing. But there is a principle called Scipray. It's CYPRES, where you can ask the Attorney General's office to allow you to use the parking area to fulfill the public purpose versus the two pieces that are being traded, and make the argument that it's not practical to use the pieces you're trading, and that it's fulfilling a greater public purpose to use the piece that you're acquiring from the homeowner to fulfill that public purpose. So there is an ability to go through a process to trade one piece that's restricted to a public purpose to allow you to use a different piece. And we've had success in resolving those types of issues through the AG's office. So it is possible if there is that sort of restriction on that piece.
Can we, next, bring it up here next, okay?
Am I correct in understanding the town charter that if the property is valued at more than $10,000, it would also have to be approved by the RTM as well as the town council?
That is correct. Yep, that would be part of any process.
Thank you.
I don't have a question as much as a comment, but in this district, zoning district in Noank, minimum property size is 20,000 square feet. So I don't think we come close to anything. If we took all of that property and the property with the house, I don't think you'd even come close to 20,000 square feet. So you would be creating, whatever you do there, a substandard lot, non-conforming substandard lot, which is illegal. If they wanted to come and protest that to our zoning enforcement officer, he would probably turn it over to the zoning board of appeals. But right now, I see no hardship for that.
This is the last one, and then we got to set up for the next meeting. So last question.
I'd like to suggest a show of hands to those that are present here tonight that would like to see it be and remain public use the way it has been for so many, many years.
To clarify.
You're taking a show of hands to say, just because the homeowner has allowed you to use this land, that we just want to take it, and who cares if they wanted it? I mean, I don't even understand why you have a show of hands.
It's a little bit of a subjective question
just
too,
saying
because it's
that
not going to
it
be
would-
all exactly as it's been.
No, but it
there's-
would be good to see visually how many people have been using it.
Want somebody to just take it?
Let's just,
Since 1948, nobody's been using my land but me.
so we're just going to take comments as people come up. We're not going to do a show of hands right now. And then I thank everyone for coming. And if you haven't signed up, please come up as soon as we shut this off for the public comment. Though the mayor will, yeah, there is 2 public hearings tonight. This one here is for the Riverview. There's also a cannabis public hearing tonight, if anybody's interested in that. Public comment, because at 6:30 is the official public hearing, so you can actually go on record and speak. Okay, yeah, right at 6:30 in 20 minutes, yep. Okay, thank you, everyone. I don't know if we have any extras. I can show you. It's the first thing on the agenda. Yeah, it's the first item.
Am I supposed to sign in here?
Yes.